NYC's latest report. Next slide, please. So just a general overview of where the report falls within GNYC's work overall. It's one of 4 primary areas of impact our data and research reports. There's the College Completion Innovation Fund, supporting the college access and success community, which is the Network for College Success, our main program there, which a lot of you probably know, and Academic Readiness, which the main project there is the Collaborative Curriculum Revision Project. So that's where it sits in our 4 areas of impact. These are released periodically as part of our work to conduct research and disseminate data in order to increase transparency, better understand potential obstacles to student success, and endorse policy and practice changes to increase college readiness and degree completion in New York. Past reports have included faculty and student experiences across redesigned developmental math course models. That's from a couple years ago. 2017, we had increasing success for 2 to 4 year transfer students within CUNY, and the 2016 iteration of this report, the State of College Readiness and Degree Completion in New York City. Next slide, please. So just a brief overview of these are the overarching goals that we touch on throughout the report, just to refresh everyone's memory a little. The DOE equity and excellence goals are by 2026, 84% of DOE students will graduate high school on time, and 3/4 of those graduates will be college ready. For the CUNY degree completion goals, they're looking to double the 3-year graduation rate for associate degree programs by 2022, and that's a 36% target. And they're also looking to raise the 6-year graduation rate for bachelor's programs 10 percentage points, and that's by 2025, and that's a 65% target. Next slide, please. So as we can see here, the graduation rate of the 2015 cohort, which were the 2019 grads, was 77%. And you can see from the chart with the 2010 baseline of 65, that's a 12 percentage point increase. So we're seeing some really good progress there, and really inching toward that 84% goal. Next slide, please, thanks. For immediate college enrollment, the rate of the DOE class of 2018, which is the most recent year we have data for, the enrollment rate was 81% for immediate college enrollment. That's a little more of a modest increase, 4 percentage points over the class of 2014. This is a rate that's remained pretty high over the course of the last decade. The DOE and CUNY, the Office of K-16 initiatives, have concentrated pretty steadily over this time on college access programming. On the DOE side, College Access for All eliminated the CUNY application fee and supports over 400 DOE high schools in planning post-secondary milestones, establishing college and career-ready culture, and really building the staff capacity to get this work done. At CUNY K-16, we have College Bridge for All, which trains a core of college coaches to support graduating seniors in matriculating to college, and that's going to expand next year to serve all students graduating from a New York City public school, so that's really great news. Next slide, please. The percentage of college-ready DOE high school graduates in 2019 was 71%, so really getting close to that 3/4 goal for equity and excellence. As you can see from the 2010 baseline, it's a huge 37 percentage point increase, really dramatic, sharp increase. And their CUNY remediation policies since 2017 are a really important factor in that. And I'm going to touch on that a little more in the next slide in a little more detail, what that entails. Next slide, please. So for remediation, CUNY determined that more students were capable of succeeding in credit-bearing courses than were being assigned to them, and made a couple of big changes. They decided to stop using standardized placement tests to assign students to remediation and replace them with a multiple measures approach, a more holistic approach to gauging student proficiency. This is an algorithm that takes into account high school grades, SAT scores, and Regents exam scores, among other things. They began work to substitute traditional non-credit remedial classes that are prerequisites to credit-bearing courses with what are referred to as co-requisite courses. And these courses allow students who aren't proficient to enroll in credit-bearing math and English while making use of required academic support. So those can take the shape of additional instruction hours, mandatory workshops, and tutoring. Next slide, please. So undergirding persistence and momentum across CUNY is the CUNY Academic Momentum Campaign. It's a large campaign designed to support the CUNY degree completion goals by focusing on 3 key strategies. We have communicating that students should be attempting 30 credits a year in order to really graduate in a timely fashion, increasing the percentage of students completing Gateway English and Math within their first year, and also semester by semester degree maps that are to be used at all CUNY campuses. Implemented in conjunction with the aforementioned developmental education reforms, it's meant to place more students into credit-bearing coursework. Next slide, please. So we detailed a couple of case studies in the report that were very interesting in the persistence and momentum realm around CUNY. The first was the QC&4 initiative at Queens College. So 60% of Queens College full-time first-time freshmen earned 30 credits in their first year in 2018. And that's a pretty marked 15 percentage point increase since 2014. And QC&4 has been pretty instrumental in driving that progress. It guarantees that entering freshmen will graduate in 4 years, providing they adhere to the program requirements, which are pretty well spelled out upon entry. It's an opt-out model, which means that new full-time freshmen are automatically registered unless they intentionally choose to withdraw from the program. It includes things like new student orientation and mandatory advising. In fact, holds are actually placed on freshman accounts until an appointment with an academic advisor is scheduled, so they're pretty serious about that. There's targeted email communication to students, apprising them of their degree completion progress. For example, you could receive a notification that you didn't complete 15 credits in the semester or 30 credits that year to really try to get you back on track for your studies. It also standardizes winter and summer course enrollment. So this streamlines the academic year, where students are able to more efficiently distribute their credits to catch up or even get ahead and really make some progress. Next slide, please. So the second case study we look at in the report a bit is at LaGuardia Community College. And they had a human-centered design approach that incorporated focus groups of current and former students to really determine their needs firsthand and what they required to be successful. The result of these focus groups was the LaGuardia app. So this mobile application push notification format is something that's super familiar for most students, something they're already really familiar with all the apps they use, and highly accessible. It's something you can check quickly on your phone and not have to get to a computer, which isn't always the easiest thing to do. It allows them to play a very active role in maintaining their degree progress and has such features as advising appointment scheduling, up-to-date status of GPA and course credits earned, and even they can check their lifetime Pell Grant eligibility. So for the transfer to completion details of the report, I'm going to hand it over to Melissa, and she can tell us a little bit about those.
All right, thank you. So to talk a little bit about transfer, I think this chart taken from the report really shows how large a portion of the CUNY student body is made up of transfer students. I think often people and faculty and students themselves don't realize how large a part of the student body that transfer students are, especially at the CUNY senior colleges. And if you look across the graph, I mean, you can see it's 76% at Lehman, and it's a pretty strong 2/3 majority at several of the senior colleges in particular. And so both internal to CUNY and I think across the sector, there's been a lot of increased focus on this population over the last few years, and a lot more to come in the year ahead. As you can see from this chart, which is a little bit complicated, but CUNY has been studying over the years the difference in performance outcomes for students that start at a bachelor's degree program versus students that transfer into a bachelor's degree program from an associate's degree program. And so what this really shows here is that when you sort of control for how many students, how many credits students are bringing with them from their associate's degree program, they're still much less likely to graduate with a bachelor's degree, and they progress less efficiently towards that degree. So you can see over time, CUNY has controlled for various indicators to try and understand, why it is that transfer students are not graduating with the 4-year degree at the same rate as students that start at the 4-year school. And, there's definitely some that is attributable to either socioeconomic status or the difference in high school, both preparation and performance. But even when you control for all these different factors, there's still a more than 6% gap between the potential to earn a bachelor's degree between the native native freshmen and transfers. And so, you know, the system's understanding of this is that there is something inherent in the experience of transferring that in and of itself prevents students from, you know, earning credits and ultimately reaching that 4-year degree. And so this has really been a big focus of, you know, Graduate NYC's work over the last few years, of CUNY more broadly, and I think also of a lot of our CBO partners, really supporting students through that transfer process. And we're, you know, really committed over the next year or two to pull together a report that's specific about transfer, because there really is so much happening, and there's so much important about this population that I think, you know, we'll touch on this at the end, but this will only continue to be more important in the era that we're in right now. So just to touch on a couple of things that we've seen that have shown promising success in the transfer area. One of the things that we've really been looking at that has shown promise has been around helping students find their academic home at their 4-year college. And so we found that through some qualitative research that it's really important for students to connect academically with their 4-year campus, that they're less maybe interested in the purely social connection, but really being embedded in the campus through their major is really important to their success. And so we've seen a whole host of examples throughout the CUNY system, but one in particular that we highlight is the Queens College Transition to Teaching project, which is helping students who are transferring from, in particular, LaGuardia and Queensborough into Queens College in the education major, to really connect with other students that are pursuing that major, to connect really closely with advisors and professors, and to really understand what that trajectory looks like, and including meeting with alums from the program as well. So as I mentioned, we're definitely going to issue some sort of report and host a convening that's specific around transfer, because there is so much work happening in this area. So obviously the most important data point of them all, I suppose, is, do students graduate? And so here you could see the upward trend lines for 3-year associate degree completion. The most recent year that we have data for is the 2019 grads who started in the 2016 cohort. So that is up to 24%. Again, there's a pretty big goal of doubling the rate, which would be a 36% goal by 2022. And similarly for the bachelor's degree, a pretty sizable trend line going up to 60%. Again, the goal is 65 by 2025. And you can see that as of the 2019 grads, which is the year we had the most recent data for, it was a 60% from the cohort that entered in 2013. So the work ahead, so this is a snapshot of all of the goals and the progress in one place. So this is kind of pulling together all the data points from the report and from this presentation into one chart. So you could see the dark grays were the original 2010 baseline that was established when Graduate NYC was founded. You could see a lot how progress has been made, which are the sort of the light gray bars. And then the green and the blue are the sort of remaining, the work left towards those original goals. So as you can see, it's like we've come very far, and there's still a lot of work to do. And we maybe not obviously had pulled this data probably back in February before the world changed, and so we looked at this and we saw, you know, there's a lot of progress, and we thought, okay, we're on this upward trajectory. But obviously a lot has happened in that period of time that I think shifted the way we're thinking about the work ahead, and what does this really look like in the post-COVID world. And so some of the things that we've really been thinking about are, you know, how is the pandemic going to impact who enrolls at CUNY and who accesses public higher education more generally. You know, so here are some high-level trends or things that we're sort of anticipating. In general, unemployment rates, going up really high is going to send some New Yorkers back to school. But at the same time, there's going to be an increased number of students that have, severe financial insecurities and are food and housing insecure. And the cost of college is going to be out of reach for those students. And then sort of the countervailing trend potentially is that there's going to also be students who otherwise might have attended school outside of New York City who might opt to attend CUNY instead, or attend online courses at CUNY instead. And most recently, CUNY announced a test-blind admissions policy, so they will not be even looking at SAT scores or ACT scores in the year ahead. And so, we don't really know how that will play into who enrolls at CUNY, but that does seem like a pretty important factor over the next year and a half. So to get a little bit more specific, we really looked at the Great Recession to think about what are some of the trends that we might see again now. So one of the things that happened back in 2008 was that people 25 and older that had already attended college and maybe had earned some credits and left, once again looked to community college to strengthen their skills and to have an opportunity to progress in the workforce. So that's something that we might see coming out in the year or two ahead of us. Again, community colleges might expect to receive sort of a temporary influx of students who are looking for a more affordable pathway than going out of town for school. And so it's really this optimal time for community colleges in a way to position themselves as a really important entry point into post-secondary pathways. And hopefully, again, we'll just continue this push towards more seamless transfer pathways between community colleges and four-year institutions. One of the other interesting things that happened in 2008 was that it caused a increase in the popularity of dual enrollment programs because those allow high school students to earn college credit while they're still in high school. And it's a very attractive and affordable way for students to get a head start on earning some college credits. And so this might be something else that's really sought after in this time period. And I guess that's my last one. So I know we have some questions coming in on the chat. So we can start there and see how many of those we get through, and then also take any other questions if people want to raise their hands. So let me open up the chat and see what was asked. So the first question we received was about the 81% immediate college enrollment rate. Does that include CUNY and non-CUNY? Yes. So that slide from earlier, if I can pull it back up, that has the increase in immediate college enrollment. This includes everyone graduating from a New York City public school and attending any post-secondary option. So it includes CUNY, non-CUNY, in-state, out-of-state, and including some post-secondary sort of vocational and other opportunities as well. So it's a pretty inclusive number.
The next question was, can you talk more about how the test line admission could affect graduation rates?
Could impact college graduation rates?
Yes, the test line admission policy.
That's an interesting question. I don't know that there's a prediction on how that might impact ultimate college graduation rates. I think, it's obviously brought on by the pandemic that students might not be able to take the SAT. I think what's going to be interesting about that is, as Alex mentioned, the new developmental education policy is sort of based on the multiple measures, which ordinarily would also include SAT scores. And so our assumption is that, CUNY is going to have to rely more heavily on regions, and in particular high school GPA and high school GPA in math and English, to determine, who is enrolling in credit-bearing courses versus co-requisite courses. But I don't really think there's a prediction that the SAT blind policy would have an effect on ultimate college graduation rates.
Okay. And following up, I just received a question that's similar in that realm of the SAT policy, how it impacts other areas. So if someone was curious if there's any indications of how CUNY's suspension of the SAT and admissions criteria will affect college readiness.
Will affect college readiness?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's an expectation that it will affect college readiness itself. I think it's back to the issue around how does CUNY place students in co-requisites versus remedial courses versus, standard credit-bearing courses. It's just sort of missing one data point that normally would go into that algorithm, but I don't think there's a specific prediction around the SAT.
Okay.
Or lack thereof. Changing college readiness, I think there's definitely, I think there's an important equity, a piece of the puzzle by making it truly SAT blind. I think when schools become SAT optional, that often sends a very confusing message to students about what they should be sending and not sending, and what's important and not important. I think sending a very clear message that the policy is we're not looking at SAT scores and what we're looking at is GPA is at least sending a very clear message to students on where they should be focusing. So I think ultimately, hopefully that will be helpful from like an equity standpoint. Looks like there was another question. Do you have any data on graduation rates or other rates for transfer students who attended high schools in other countries? I actually don't think we have data on that. At least we don't in our report. We definitely can investigate if CUNY has anything helpful or interesting on that and share that back. Although I'm not sure if they would be looking specifically at transfer students. I mean, when CUNY is looking at transfer students, they're looking at people that transferred between various colleges, not necessarily having attended high school, not having looked at high school at another country and then transferred within CUNY. But we can definitely see if there's any interesting or helpful data points around people that are coming from directly from high school in other countries. I see another question coming in about the remediation. I was wondering how the new remediation metrics are taking into account the pandemic. Most students can rely on their high school grades since regions. Right. I mean, I think we will get back around the clarification about the multiple measures algorithm for remediation, but I do think that's sort of our assumption, is that it's going to be very reliant on GPA. I mean, students who are entering now probably already had taken regions, but I think going forward, CUNY is going to really have to think about what else could go into that algorithm, and so we'll share any clarifying information we get around that.
I sent a question to Alex in the chat, but there was a question regarding I guess enrollment numbers for fall 2020, since there's a campus that's not seeing the expected increases in the slides, but that data will probably not be available to you until later, correct?
Right. So I mean, the enrollment data precedes the upcoming semester. So we don't have the information yet on what the enrollment data for the fall looks like, but that will be something that each of the colleges are looking at. And I think across the board, CUNY hasn't seen a decrease in enrollment, but obviously there is variation that happens by campus.
I received a question regarding the new SAT blind admissions policy will stand, is not COVID related. from my understanding of what's going on in the field is that a lot of the enrollment tests have been canceled. And so a lot of schools are moving to be responsive to that fact that SAT and ACTs have been canceled over the past couple of months. So to make it equitable for the admissions policies for students, a lot of schools have moved to being optional or blind. And so I believe, admissions offices will follow what's going on, and if those tests become available as
Hmm.
the health and safety increases. So that's just something that we all will be monitoring.
Yeah, it is sort of a suspension or a test blind policy for a period of time. It's not sort of an indefinite into the future at this point in time.
I guess the next question is, what is Grad NYC's definition of college readiness? Are you using the combination of Regents exam scores to measure college readiness or something else?
Yeah, I mean, we're using the DOE definition, looking at Regents and CUNY placement exams.
I see one of, did we miss this? Do you have information on graduation rates for students who transfer or transition as part of dual joint programs? I actually do have some information on that, so I can try to dig it up. I believe I do. Let me make a note of that.
Another question that just came in was, does Graduate NYC have a definition of best fit college?
We don't have a definition, although, I mean, the DOE and our sister program, Next Stop College at CUNY K-16, is working on a match tool. So that will hopefully be something that, I mean, right now it's something that the DOE is using internally, and hopefully that will be something that could be shared more broadly over the next year. I think, given the tenuous state of the ability for college counselors to meet with students in person, we feel like it's going to be even more important for there to be a lot of online tools that students and counselors can use together virtually. So hopefully, we'll be able to share through the other programs that we work with some, more resources in that area. I think we might have missed some other people's questions. In what ways are we going to support the professional development of students interested in internships? When these students graduate, they'll be disadvantaged with employment experience. I think that's a great question, and I think that's sort of being grappled with across both DOE and CUNY and across a lot of the CBO partners that we work with. I know within CUNY K-16, there's many programs that employ CUNY students in jobs and internships that are connected to their career interests. And there's definitely some risk to those programs being cut to some extent because of the budget cuts, but we're really trying to support those types of programs because they really serve a dual purpose of giving CUNY students really high quality work experience, and then often also provide a benefit to other students either at CUNY or at DOE high schools. And so really trying to support those. But then across, our community-based partners, there's a lot of nonprofits that are trying to think creatively about virtual internships, about other types of work experience programs that they can do with, within the DOE. But I think it's it's an important point. And, in general, I think CUNY students have always had to work. And so it's always been this sort of issue about how do we get students into really high quality sort of internships and work experiences that also prepare them for, making those professional connections that, they're going to need when they graduate. And so I think that's just become even more important in the state that we're in right now.
I have another question here. Are there more specific data about transfer students e.g. transfer students with associate degrees versus transfer students at 15, 30, 45 credits? And is this connected all to success rates, percent who graduate, and or on time to graduate? There is some more kind of drilled down transfer data that I know the Office of Institutional Research and Assessment is reassessing a lot of transfer stuff, in that it's a study it's something they've looked into over the years, and something that they're looking to fairly specifically now, and we are in conversation with them to get this kind of more drilled down data. Certainly having an associate degree and transferring with an associate degree is something we've seen. There's a lot more persistence in students that do have an associate degree. I mean, that's students that bring an associate degree with them to a 4-year are certainly much more likely to graduate. I think that's something that we've just seen, overwhelmingly. As far as the more specific data, that's something we're definitely working on. We're looking to certainly have just specifically a transfer brief within the next year. So we're going to be getting into all that different kind of stuff, and we're already fielding the data for it.
There was another follow-up question about transfer in terms of other bright spots in terms of programs or pipelines. So I thought I would just add a couple other examples that I don't think, are not necessarily specific to the report, but just what's happening in the transfer field more broadly. I think there's been a lot of recent work for the 2- and 4-year colleges to work together on pipelines and on, having professors actually, sit together and chart out the path between the 2-year and the 4-year program. So I think that is sort of showing some initial success when you really have the faculty at different schools sitting down to say, okay, this requirement here equates to that requirement there, or how can we rework the course at the associate degree level so that it is really the prereq for the next course they're going to take at the bachelor's degree level. And I think more success in that area has come in these very specific majors, right? So in, business programs where students are transferring from an associate business program to a 4-year business program. And so I think it's about how do we expand some of that to more of the liberal arts programs more broadly. I think another thing that recently was launched is the Transfer Explorer tool. And so that's a publicly available website that allows both students, but also staff that are supporting students in any capacity, or in fact, any adult that's supporting a student in any capacity, to go on and see how courses equate across colleges. So if a student is looking to transfer and they sort of have a specific major in mind, they know what courses they've already taken, they can see how all of their credits would transfer into different colleges. And students have already been able to do that in CUNY First, but it's never been sort of publicly available. Oh, thank you. Rebecca just put the link in the chat. It's never been like a publicly available resource where, any counselor, any CBO person that is supporting a young person, or any adult that is supporting a young person, could really go in and manipulate the data to see which 4-year school would be the best option for a student based on their, their interests, their educational interests, and the courses that they've taken already. And the tool also allows for faculty to look and see, oh, how does my course equate if a student transfers in or out of my school? And so it allows for some more like real-time faculty interaction to say, oh, okay, my, sociology 101 class really is the equivalent of a sociology class at this other school. Let's make sure that the credit transfers in that way, so students get the right credit for every class that they've taken, which is really important for, transfer students, obviously, to be able to make progress towards their degree.
I see. I think we might have missed one here. Are all colleges seeing increases in graduation rates? That's actually a good question. I don't want to make it seem like this is all kind of like a uniform, like amazing increase across the board. There, something like QC in 4, and what LaGuardia is doing are definitely, those are ones that have really taken hold at the colleges. Certainly not all of them are seeing increases or dramatic increases or increases at all. Some of them are a little more sluggish, and I think that's something that we mentioned at the end of the report too, is really spreading this momentum campaign more uniformly across all the campuses, so that all of them can kind of enjoy the same. They're certainly not all implemented in the same way QC4 is. That's a very regimented, very organized example, and I think a real challenge will be to kind of spread the wealth and try to get those more embedded at the campuses so that they can enjoy the same increases. But no, it's not. It's definitely not a uniform thing across the board, and that there are a lot of different campuses that aren't, that certainly aren't achieving to that degree.
I also sent you a message I received privately regarding if there was a difference in senior college persistence from students who admitted into ASAP versus college discovery.
That is maybe information I certainly don't have it in one place, but information I could cobble together probably. Does that person want to email me separately maybe? I think that's something I can get from a number of different sources.
I see more questions coming in. Do you have data for the percentage of freshmen that require remediation in math and science? So there is not a science specific remediation requirement. We do have in the report, I don't have that exact slide in front of me, but we do have the percentages of students that require math and English remediation.
The next question was, how does New York City persistence performance compare to public colleges in other urban areas?
I don't know if we have the actual specific persistence data, but in terms of graduation, college graduation, CUNY is pretty much on par with the national averages, I believe, at both the associate's level and the bachelor's degree level. Do you have college-specific level data on persistence grad rates that you can share? We can certainly, we don't have it sort of formatted in the pretty way that the report is, but we can send around the links to the CUNY, I forget what they're called, the sort of CUNY handbook that publishes that publishes persistence and graduation rates by campus. So that is something we can share, that it is all sort of publicly available by campus. Latika, were there any questions that we missed?
I've been sending you all the private ones that are a little bit more lengthy. I think we got to most of them. Did you answer the question regarding if the enrollment rate also included students who were refugee or asylee?
I think we did get that. That is information that we don't have, but I'm curious now too. So okay. We don't, but I think we can look into that, because I'm fairly curious. But no, the answer is no, the short answer.
Well, that was all of the major questions, and just a general question that folks had was regarding, will this playback be available? And so everything from all forums and resources are shared on our resource page, and I'll put the link again in the chat right now. So this video will most likely be uploaded by tomorrow, Thursday the latest.
Oh yeah, certainly by tomorrow. I would think so. Yeah.
Thanks, Latika. Yeah, and we'll send out a recording link to everyone that registered. So if you missed anything, you'll get it that way, and we'll follow up with a few additional resources based on the questions that were asked. And I'll put, I think our contact information should be on the last slide. So feel free to reach out to us directly if there were questions that we missed or things that we forget to follow up about. I see people are still chatting stuff. Can you share a few reflections on the impact of the ASAP program receiving less funding this year? Ooh, that is a big one that I'm not really sure how to reflect on it per se. I mean, I think in general, you know, there's gonna be a lot of really tough cuts on the sort of tax levy program